Welcome to the Art of Marketing Operations, a Tailor podcast. I'm Glenn Bottomley, and today my guest is Jackie Adams, Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Papa, an organization offering a new category of care to move us all closer to a world where no one has to go it alone. Thanks for joining me today, Jackie.
Hey, Glenn, glad to be here.
Well, Jackie, your firm, Papa, helps health plans and employers connect employees and members of their families to real people to help with things like, everyday tasks and companionship and transportation and so much more. So can we first start off here and can you share a little bit more about what Papa does?
Yeah, sure. So, Papa's a platform. We provide companionship and assistance to health plans through Medicaid and Medicare Advantage. And like you mentioned, we also work with employers to offer Papa as a benefit to employees. So, our overall vision is to imagine a world where no one has to go at it alone. So, we help conquer loneliness, social isolation, and just also provide a little bit more support to older adults who might need it, such as like some help grocery shopping, technology lessons, maybe driving someone to a doctor's appointment or to the bank and whatnot. So we're really there to provide pals to people who might need a pal.
It is such a wonderful service. As I mentioned to you when we chatted before, I had not heard of the service. And then, of course, when I went to the website and learned all about this, services at papa.com, it just amazing. It's such a great thing. But if we flip this around just a little bit, because now, of course, you're driving a product and service that is impacting people's lives so much. But what advice would you give to, say, marketing professionals as it relates to marketing operations who may be working for a firm who is marketing a product or service that maybe isn't impacting people's lives as much as you are now, or maybe coming at it from such a mission-driven perspective?
Yeah, so I would say passion is really key. Papa obviously is a mission driven organization, which is very easy to align to that and be passionate towards that. But I think no matter what you're doing, whether it's working for a mission driven company or working for an agency or a company that maybe just sells a product like a tech solution or shoes, for example, like as long as you're passionate towards like that mission and you can really easily align yourself to the goal of the company, I think it's easy to do your job then. If you see the goal of the company and the goal of individual departments within the company, and you can align yourself to that, it's easy to create like a marketing operations. Sorry, can we start over for that one?
Sure. Yeah. No, hang on a second. I'll just make a note. And right there. Yep. Got it.
So I'd say just passion is key. It's really easy for me to align with Papa's mission because it's improving people's lives. But I think whether you're working for an agency that's helping companies or you're selling a product or a service such as like shoes or like a SaaS software, as long as you can align to that end goal and what your company is driving to, I think it'll make your job a lot more easier and it'll be easy to like find solutions to help get to that goal.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, because I think that, people feel that sort of energy. People feel it. They feel it in marketing materials and communications and content, listening to podcasts like this, watching videos, social media. They get such a sense of, how your organization is working and sort of the energy that people bring. And so I think that that's, good advice to make sure that you are not only bringing passion to your work, but that it is passionate work that you're enjoying doing. So based on your background, because I know that you've had a really diverse background, from your career perspective. So what are some of the I don't know, challenges that you've experienced when dealing with, let's say, let's just focus on, say, inbound marketing activities across the spectrum of maybe B2C, B2B, maybe B2B2C, sorts of inquiries. What are some of those that you've seen along the way?
Yeah, so it's funny because Papa alone is all three of those, So we're B2B in the sense that we sell our service to health plans and to employers, but those companies are B2C, so they have members that they offer that to. And then we're also B2C because we try to grow our PAL base. That's really the driver of what we do. The PALs are there to help the members of our customers. So on our website, we have like a contact us form. We have a bunch of different forms, and essentially any of those different people, whether they're B2B, B2C, B2B2C, fill out that form. So I work in enterprise marketing. That's my main role. So I work directly with the sales team. So initially, we set up that contact us form for the B2B contacts to hit sales. And very quickly, we realized all these other great people who are looking for help or have questions or want to connect with someone from Papa are filling out that form too. So for me, right away, I realized the importance of collaborating across teams, across the entire company, and figuring out, okay, this form is meant for sales, but all these other people are filling out the form too. How do we get them in touch with the person that they need to get in touch with as soon as possible, just so they can get their questions answered and they can receive help with anything they need help in? So automation is my best friend for this. We have our form ask some questions. Most of the time it goes to the sales team, but through automation in our CRM, the sales team can just select like from a drop down what the best category that person belongs to if it's not the sales team. From there, we've set up some emails and some automated processes. So we'll respond to the customer or the person right away, just letting them know we received their inquiry and some other paths that they can take to maybe find their answer. That's automated, so the sales team doesn't need to write out an email every time someone who's not directly correlated to sales comes in. At the same time, depending on what that drop down is that they pick as to the reason it shouldn't go to sales, if it's like a PAL or a PAL applicant or a member or member advocate, we'll send over that person's information to our care team, which is our support team. We'll let them know like who that person is, what their contact details are, what the question that they had was, or what they need help on. And then they'll also reach out to that person as soon as possible. For us, it's just important to get that contact in the hands of the person who can best help them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have had that same experience, and I'd like to share just a quick story. I've had that same experience where once you open up either a contact us form or an online chat, what comes through those lines, it's all over the board.
Yeah.
It is sales inquiries, it's customer service inquiries, it's sales representatives trying to sell you something. It's all across the board. It's really fascinating. But so I think your point about really making sure that you deeply understand the inbound and providing all the avenues for that is really, really important and valuable. Quick little story for you. There's a book that I read a couple years ago called AI Superpowers, so Artificial Intelligence Superpowers. And Kai-Fu Lee was the author. And one of the products that he spoke about was created in China. And this company created a tablet. And it was a tablet computer, and it was specifically focused for seniors and senior adults. And oftentimes they were, maybe living in assisted living or some sort of, a nursing home or what have you. And but they suddenly, once they released the product, they found that the number of inbound technical support requests that came to their technical support line, it was just all over the board. And it was there was so many calls coming to technical support. But when they actually diagnosed what the technical issue was, they realized that there were not any technical issues. And it was actually people that were actually calling in for companionship. And they were actually calling to just talk to someone. And that the tablet made it so simple to actually call in for quote unquote technical support. But the number of, so they had to change, to your point, they had to change their, their whole approach because the need of the product shifted.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really fascinating. And what you were talking about being able to prepare whether that contact us form was there it's really, really pertinent. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Now, another shift where, so we're talking a little bit about inbound, but if we could shift a bit to physical marketing, sort of physical marketing impressions. So when you think about physical marketing impressions, things like physical signs, signs or graphics, postcards, or point of sale, or flyers, or events at a trade show, or direct mail, or just any sort of physical marketing material. How are you sort of currently integrating sort of physical marketing with your digital marketing in an overall marketing strategy?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Right now, on the B2B side, we're not too focused on physical marketing just yet. Obviously, we have like our swag for trade shows. We have our white papers and materials that we hand out. All of those will have like a hello at papa.com, like email tied to them. Just so if they want to get in touch with someone, that email is then tied to the marketing team. We know where they came from because they're already in our CRM. We get those event lists. They're uploaded. They're tied to the event through lead source. And we're able to then pass it off to the sales team. We do actually have something coming up. I don't know if I can talk about it yet, but oddly enough, it might already be in place by the time this podcast airs. But we have something exciting coming up for some of our top targeted accounts and even some of our current customers. Because some of our customers might already be working with us for like, let's say Medicare Advantage, but they're not working with us yet for Medicaid. So we're trying to work on the customer life cycle stages as well. But I think as far as picking up attribution for those physical marketing materials, it's really just knowing if that person's already in our pipeline and that helps them move forward. We're already tracking everything in HubSpot. We know who everyone is who's been on our website or filled out a form, or someone who might have come from like a sponsorship or an event or a content download. But really right now, the only thing we're doing for tracking is just having that email in place. And then we've started to play around with QR codes a little bit too.
Yeah. I think everything that you just mentioned, it's what that feels to me as in terms of reinforcing is, the physical marketing impression, it plays a role. Obviously, the digital avenues that you have, there's all that sort of tracking, but I really appreciated what you wrote about or what you said about, sort of the special email address, trying to drive and connect customer attribution. The event promotional products, the white papers that you're putting out, the content downloads, kind of connecting those things, the special events and the trade shows and how you're doing that, trade show booths, the physical marketing, the materials and the visual marketing of how Papa is seen, in the market. So it's really powerful to hear how you are blending physical in with a very strong digital presence at Papa. So thank you for sharing all that. Now, I also know from our previous conversation that you love working for startup organizations because, you sort of can get to set the tone for the organization. You can really help to drive and scale the organization for rapid growth, et cetera. So what have been some of the most impactful lessons that you've gained in, the kind of call it the first year when you're managing marketing operations for a startup?
Yeah, sure. So One of the things I did when I first joined Papa, and I think it's what most people tend to do when joining a startup, no matter what your role is you want to join and really like hit the ground running, right? Like you're at this new, exciting company. Everything is moving so quickly. You want to just get started and build out a system. For me, I came to Papa and originally just was like, okay, we got to get personas created. We need to create a lead flow process. We need to create lead scoring. We need to capture everything right away coming in once we have some content that we could start marketing. And I realized very quickly that it's important to take a step back and really just take that time, especially at the beginning when you're building something new, to really understand the business, understand exactly like what your target audience wants to hear, be able to understand what their need is, speak internally to other teams, understand what the current processes are, how they might be able to be optimized, where are the gaps. And then once you do get started, it's really important to communicate across all teams, especially in a role like marketing operations, because you're kind of touching things that impact all teams. Figure out like what the goal of each team is, what the overall goal is, and then almost work backwards. How are we going to get there to hit the goal? So for me, I'd say that lessons I've learned is really just start by understanding, then create. Before launching anything, collaborate, make sure everyone understands what the processes are, understand what their needs are. So adjust to, once you collaborate, collaborate again to make sure there's no breaks in any systems, and then launch and just move forward with confidence. And then once you launch too, it's really just a combination of everything I mentioned before. So you want to continue collaborating, you want to continue understanding new challenges, new needs, and adjusting, and then recreate from there. So I'm constantly evolving once you do get started.
Yeah. What I also hear in your response there too is just the importance of the foundation. Making sure that you're communicating with the teams, understanding those pieces, getting ready for the launch, and just it also reinforces, I think, in my own mind, hearing your thoughts there, is just the importance of that first year. Because it's so important to lay that groundwork to be prepared for the launch. But that also, I think, maybe segues into maybe a follow-on question, which is, okay, so now you've gone to a first year, you've got to launch. Now, can you talk a little bit about sort of scaling, for rapid growth? So, can you share then some of your, best lessons that you've learned on how a marketing operations team can then, drive an organization to rapid growth?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned something great, which is scalability. When you're starting from scratch, it's important that the processes you put in place, you are thinking about scalability. Otherwise, you're constantly just going to be redoing everything. And yeah, like that's annoying, but it's more frustrating for everyone when you redo something, that everyone has to learn something new every few months and everyone has to adapt. And when you're at a company that's growing at the rate that Papa is, it's not going to work. Like you can't reteach something every few months because the first thing wasn't working. So when you create something from the beginning, you have to think about scalability. For me, when I create something, I always map it out. I use like a mapping tool. I map out everything, and then I think about processes that might be in place 6 months from now and how they can then be put into that map easily without having to recreate something. For rapid growth, I work very closely with our head of demand gen, just because she brings in the contacts. Like her responsibility is really capturing those new contacts, getting them into the CRM. Whereas my role from there is, okay, what do we do with them now that we have them? So I work closely with her. It's important for me to be able to understand what she's doing and what she's using to capture the contacts. I'd say when they come in, it's important to create some sort of automated system to know exactly who those contacts are so you can segment them. So for example, like Papa, we have different audiences. We target Medicare Advantage, we target Medicaid, we target employers, different job titles from those companies. So when those contacts are captured, we get those basic things like the first name, the company name, the job title, the email, but there's some hidden fields that I think are really important to be able to capture right away. So like for me, like I created a property called relationship type. Depending on what they're engaging with, we can easily assume if they're a health plan or if they're an employer. We also, what other properties do we have? Even within a relationship type, are they Medicaid or are they more interested in Medicare Advantage? What are they engaging with? What are they downloading? From there, we have properties called last touch lead source and last touch campaign source. So a last touch lead source could be something like a webinar or a content offer. Whereas the campaign is which webinar did they watch? Was it something for employers or was it something for health plans? Which piece of content did they download? From there, we now have all that information from when they enter our CRM. And if the first touch is blank, it gets filled in with the last touch. So we have a multi-touch attribution system in place. But from there, we're able to enter them into like a marketing nurture, which is attached to lead score. So we're able to constantly nurture these contacts and capture what they're engaging with, update their lead score every time they engage. So once they hit a certain threshold, they're passed off to sales, or maybe they engage enough that they on their own fill out our contact us form, and then they talk to sales. So I'd say for rapid growth, it's important to know exactly what you want to capture from your contacts from the very beginning, be able to segment them, and then be able to just re-engage them until they're really ready for sales to speak with them.
Yeah, I would also imagine, based on how you just described that from a process perspective, that implementing technologies like that. You mentioned CRM, you mentioned HubSpot, Google Analytics, and all the social tools in terms of Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera. However, you're pulling that information in, that over time, starting in the very beginning and then measuring how that's performing, I would imagine that consistently doing that over and over again is one of the ways that you can drive funnel velocity. Is that what you found as well as you've implemented more technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a team reporting meeting every month. I look over our reports almost every day. It's important to know what's working, what's not working, what's really driving contacts to come in. What's the first touch that contacts have that ends up converting to an MQL, an SQL, an opportunity, or a deal? What's the last touch that they had that actually like drove them to convert? So I think those are the two most important things that we're constantly looking at, like what brought them in and then what actually converted them. And the lead source being like the platform, like were they brought in over social? Was it paid social or organic social? Were they brought in over like a sponsorship? Were they brought in over an event? Did they convert because someone from our team met with them at the event? And then the campaign source is the specific thing, like our paid social content might be doing really great, but then you look at the specific campaign and you see like this campaign is actually doing much better than this other piece of content. We should adjust this a little bit. We love A/B testing too. So we're starting to do a lot more of that as well on our landing pages and on our ads, even as much as where a form is on a landing page. We've noticed for a certain type of person, the form at the top of a landing page performs much better. Whereas a different type of person, a form at the bottom of the landing page where they can read a little bit more context and see a little bit more about what the content piece is about before downloading it, it performs better. But it really depends on who the person is. And A/B testing is the only way that you'll really get that information and get that data.
Yeah, to actually test it and see. And I like I like your comments about not only understanding what brought in a converted sale, but what was the campaign that did that? What was the technique that did that? What was the source that did that? That brings in those converted sales. I think that's really powerful. But also, what was I think implied in what you were also saying too is that things can change over time, and that A/B testing actually helps you to drive that. We've had other guests on this podcast who have said that, this campaign may actually drive a strong amount of conversion, but then that conversion just drops off, very, very, quickly, and others will stay on. So it's that constant measurement and tracking that I think is really important. And I would imagine, based on sort of how you've described Papa here, but also in your career experience, that complex sales, where there's, like in your case, there's a B2B sale to employers, there's relationships to health plan providers, you've got members, you've got clients, you've got, the customer service we talked about earlier. So it's going to be challenging, I would imagine, in like not only how to measure performance, but what to measure. So what's your sort of tips on how do you determine the most important things to measure?
Yeah, this is where I actually really struggle because for me, everything is important. So
Yeah.
like I like
The
looking.
art of marketing operations, right?
Really, the art of marketing operations, I like looking at every single detail. And I'm actually really curious about these things too. Like I like to the core, even outside of work, I like knowing like what makes a person who they are, what drives them to make decisions that they make. So when we have these monthly reporting meetings, we have like these big presentations and I always have to cut down my slides because, I put everything in it and I'm like, okay, well, who else is going to find this interesting other than me? And a lot of times it's no one. So I think what I found is most valuable for our team to know and be able to optimize on is both first touch and last touch lead source and campaign source, velocity of life cycle stages, how many people came in or how many people live within each life cycle stage per month and per week within a month. So we have leads, which are contacts entering our CRM. We actually newly have subscribers. Next Tuesday, August 8th, we're launching a new subscription service with weekly emails. So we now have subscribers, we have leads, we have MQLs, which are the leads that are handed off to sales. So these guys all hit a lead score of 100. They're ready to speak to sales, whether they filled out a contact us form or they converted through high engagement or they just requested to speak with someone. Then we have an SQL. Those are contacts that sales has like made contact with once we pass them off. So it's sales basically saying like, I've communicated with this person, like I'm going to own it from here. Opportunities, once a deal is created, a contact becomes an opportunity, and then ultimately customers. So it's important for us to track that every month. What marketing touches each one of these people had along the way. And what does the velocity of that look like? How quickly is someone converting from a lead to an MQL or an MQL to an SQL and whatnot? And then looking even deeper into what the sources are. If a contact comes in through a content offer versus through a webinar or we met them at an event, how quickly is that conversion to the next lifecycle stage, which will ultimately tell us 6 months or a year from now where we should spend more dollars when thinking about our
Right.
budget for 2023.
Yeah. Yeah, because it ultimately leads to investment decisions, and I think a coworker of mine just shared that the three questions, particularly you mentioned about coming to an executive presentation and you bring slides and maybe too many slides,
Yeah.
but they said it's what, it's so what, and it's now what. So the what is here's what's happening on the site. Here's the data that we're seeing, et cetera. The so what is this is what it means to our business, and what we're learning about how our market is changing, how our customers are changing, what's happening in the competitive environment, whatever. And the now what is now based on this information. This is now what we need to do. So I thought that was a nice crisp way of communicating that. But I think to your point in terms of what you're measuring, it's just continuing to reinforce the source, the velocity, the scale of how can you move this forward. So I think that's excellent. And
Yeah.
so I guess has there been something that maybe you or your team has achieved recently, as you've continued to implement these that you're, particularly proud of, and and maybe what skills do you think are essential for a marketing operations professional to get that kind of result?
Yeah, so I think from the very beginning, multi-touch attribution was important to us, which I think we've done a pretty good job at. We've captured everything a contact is doing once they're in our CRM along the way, so we can best figure out how to move them forward, and so we can best figure out how to optimize, right? Like even nurture emails and landing page buttons, who's clicking on what pages aren't getting clicked on. I think we've done that pretty well. I also think I'm really proud of the lead flow model that we've created, and really automating it. So, like I mentioned before, those life cycle stages are really important, and then automating how they move forward, just so it's easier on the sales team side too. They don't have to constantly update stuff to communicate to marketing that like this contact has moved forward. So, we have our life cycle stages, and we've created automation through the lead status of the life cycle stage. So, a contact converts to MQL. That's when they get handed off to the sales team. Their lead status is open. That tells us, they're newly converted to this next life cycle stage, and they're open right now. No one's reached out yet. Then we have attempting to contact. So that lets us know that sales has started reaching out to them, and that helps us with that velocity that I mentioned before. And then we have,
Yeah. Well,
oh, sorry.
and I was just going to interject that I think that also gets back to your comments earlier about the communication between the various departments and making sure, whether it's demand gen, whether it's sales, et cetera, because now by tracking things in that way that you've just described, you have it's sort of a checks and balance. You've got a way to check, okay, this is what that means. This is what, when I'm handing this over to sales, okay, is this field filled out, et cetera. And you're sort of tracking those conversations to understand this is what's important to us. You say, here's how I'm tracking this. I'm now handing this over to say, okay, now we're learning this, because it's constantly reinforcing what you're learning and helping to, again, scale and make things grow faster.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, we need to know this information. Otherwise, like, we're not going to know if it's not moving forward because it's a bad lead, or maybe that person on the sales team is out of town on vacation for 2 weeks, and that lead status stays open. And then we have connected, which to me is the most important. If a contact is, if their lead status is connected, one, they get removed from those marketing nurtures. Marketing no longer needs to send emails to them like, hey, like, this is what we do. Do you want to connect with us? But that also lets us know that was a good contact that we handed over. Alternatively, they could have been DQ'd, which is disqualified. But they were connected. That lets us know that the salesperson spoke with that contact and they decided to keep it. So it helps us know, not just the quantity of our contacts and them moving forward, but the quality of them too.
Right.
And then some skills that I think are essential for a marketing operations professional. I think having the ability to step back is really important. Marketing operations tends to see all of the fires going on because it is such an operational role. And I think a core part of that role is the ability to create solutions to put out those fires. But, when a fire happens, obviously you want to put it out as quickly as possible, but you want to do it in a way that's scalable. You don't just want to put a Band-Aid on something and, okay, like, this crazy thing is happening, we got to fix it now. Like, let's just do this solution moving forward. And if you don't have the ability to step back and really identify what the source of that problem is and why something's not going maybe the way it should be going, and having that ability to take the time to really map out a solution to scale, you're just going to create a new problem. And
you're probably going to keep experiencing that too.
Exactly. And with that, I think it's important to have to be able to adapt to change. Processes are constantly always evolving, and I think it's important to be able to evolve with them, and collaborate with teams, hear feedback, and being able to then adapt to that and change processes to make it easier for everyone. Everyone has the same goal, no matter what department you're in. So I think it's important to be able to empathize with what other people are feeling and what's needed for them to be efficient. And then like take all of that feedback and be able to create a system that implements that. And with that said, I'd say the third important skill is organization. Because you're dealing with so much data and you're working with so many different teams, it's important to like be organized, write things down, be able to remember things when you're creating processes. Because the smallest little thing that someone on a different team maybe mentioned in a conversation might be actually a really important detail when you're building out a system.
Mm-hmm. Well, in all these comments and suggestions, not only helpful and powerful lessons that you've learned along the way, but I think that this is a good description of marketing operations just in general and the importance of the function, the types of people who gravitate to this, to this discipline. And so if I raise it up sort of a level of abstraction, is there maybe a long-standing belief, in the marketing operations discipline that you have seen and you sort of vehemently disagree with, or that you feel that you have maybe found a different way to implement than maybe others in the marketing operations discipline?
Yeah, I'd say I don't know if this directly relates to marketing operations, but in general, I really don't like the term best practices, just because I feel like, you can always say, well, the best practice is this. This is how it's always been done. This is how it should be done. But best practices don't allow you to adapt and evolve. I think that it kind of crushes originality and creativity. And I like originality and creativity. I like looking for ways to optimize processes and different marketing techniques. So I'd say I go against the grain as far as using best practices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. And it's interesting too because it's such a common term, a common phrase. But you raise a really good point about crushing originality and creativity. That's an interesting point of view. So Jackie, before we wrap up today's episode, what is the main takeaway that you want to share to understand the challenges facing marketing operations executives today?
Yeah. So I'd say the main takeaway is probably how I started this conversation. Be passionate about what you're doing and keep the goal that you're working towards in the top of your mind. I think with those two things, I mean, you'll crush it because you'll always. Sorry, can I start over for this one?
Yeah. Let me mark the point here. Right there. 7. Yep, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'd say that the main takeaways are really how I started this conversation. Be passionate about what you're doing, keep the goal you're working towards top of mind, and be open to other opinions and collaborating on ideas because ultimately everyone's working towards that same goal.
That's excellent. Well, this wraps up this episode of The Art of Marketing Operations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jackie.
Thanks again for having me, Glenn.
Well, until next time, stay safe, take care, and thank you for listening.